What's up, guys? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. Today, we have quite a lot of my hair is crazy. Holy cow. We have quite a few clips to cover today. And, of course, clips are the most fun, for me at least, I think. But these are going to be covering a wide range of topics, but broadly speaking, and before we get into the meat and potatoes of what's going to be up front, a wide variety of things that are going to be coming out of this episode are this culture war concept. And I think we'll get more into it, obviously, as the show continues, but a lot of what we're going to be talking about, I think, over the next 2 years, let's say, is specifically around this. So I would prepare for quite the elongated period of time where we're not having that much of a substantive debate on policies, because that's where the Republicans are going to be talking about. So a good chunk of this stuff is going to be a continued pushback on the culture war, but specifically, as many of you may already know, we will be pushing back and highlighting this attack by Doug Mastriano on Senator Steve Sanacero from Bucks County and what's going on there. So with that being said, and of course there's going to be Republicans punish the poor is a consistent trope, maybe some might say, but that's going to be at the end as well. And leading off this episode, though, is the big drama of recent. And I feel like my mic is hot, so please let me know if my mic is a little too warm. I'm going to adjust it here live. I don't know. I'm not a sound engineer, but I'll do my best. But the meat and potatoes, the grand I'm trying not to make a horrible reference, because to be honest with you, the reference would be fitting. The grand brawl that is happening right now, and that has been happening since roughly December, but more so in the last week and a half, is Steven Crowder versus Ben Shapiro's news outlet, the Daily Wire. So if you clicked on this episode, you would know that you would see the thumbnail of this episode on YouTube is Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro. So no, this is not a love letter to them. Definitely not. But this is a weird, almost celebration, a weird soaking in of the brawl, the fight, the continued falling out of this relationship, and hopefully the positives that can come about from it from a leftist perspective or a progressive perspective. Now, for those of you that aren't maybe as terminally online as some of us, I will explain what has happened, what has led up to this, and then I have a bunch of clips from different folks, different perspectives, and I'm going to try to lead into them as best I can. But I think it's just important to note this story, even though it's not, inherently tied to politics as they're run today. And again, as we will get to later, there's not much that's going to be happening over the next 2 years, legislatively. So this is the type of battles that we're going to have to be fighting. But the Daily Wire, for those who don't know, is one of, if not the largest independent media outlets. Calling them independent media is kind of an overstatement, as they receive funding from billionaires and spend that accordingly. But it is run by Ben Shapiro, and he has a co-owner with the last name, literally his last name is Boring. And we're not going to watch any clips of his response today, but the co-owner of the Daily Wire really dug into Steven Crowder in this, but we're going to ignore him for the most part. The Daily Wire is has used quite literally, and I'm not exaggerating this, millions of dollars in Facebook advertisements, millions of dollars in YouTube advertisements. Remember also Abby Shapiro, who is Ben Shapiro's sister, who would appear before every YouTube video paying for views, because that's basically what they're doing, to boost their viewership, which would inherently boost subscribers, which by itself wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't funded directly by billionaires to buy market share. Because these are the and we'll keep alluding to this throughout this, but these are the folks that are supposedly pro capitalism, that are pro free market. And it's just interesting to see them LARP as this totally free market, while at the same time receiving funds that essentially prop them up without any challenge and have no logical base, have no real footing in reality. But alas, they exist. And Steven Crowder, for those who don't know, I am also very envious of you if you do not know who he is, because he is the most vile, racist, xenophobic, transphobic piece of crap, probably still allowed on YouTube, because there are probably worse people, but they're maybe not allowed on YouTube. And he was formerly Pinky, I believe, from Arthur. He was a voice on that show, believe it or not. And he has been publicly embarrassed quite a few times, but he's also a transphobe. He would dress up in drag and go to Planet Fitnesses and try to get kicked out, totally ignoring the fact that he was just being an obnoxious piece of crap. Again, slamming weights, doing all that stuff that would get you normally kicked out of a regular gym, let alone a Planet Fitness. But because he was dressed in drag, he was trying to, say, oh, they won't kick me out. They still did, but it was this whole thing, right? All of these publicity stunts to get in the public eye, to gain attention. He's also the change my mind guy with the mug and sitting there like a smug a-hole at colleges debating college kids right before class for them. His very little value to us, his very little value to this country and to the narrative of, just generally speaking, to leftism, to politics broadly. He is just a stain on the space, I would say. But why we're talking about it today? Formerly, and maybe I'm working with an assumption here, but for those who don't know, again, Glenn Beck was a former Fox News host, a radio host. He still does his show, but he is the owner of a network called The Blaze, which also receives billionaire funding. And The Blaze previously was home, if you want to, put it in that term, home of the wonderful show that Steven Crowder puts out every day. So what happened, and of course, The Blaze also funds Dave Rubin's content and a few others that I believe, I am correct before I said it, but I'm correct. The Blaze used to also host Tomi Lahren before she got canceled by the right wing because she is pro-choice. And that might surprise some of you, by the way, that Tomi Lahren is pro-choice, because she is an absolute nut job as well, loves Trump. But yes, was pro-choice and got kicked off of The Blaze. Now she's on Fox News. The Blaze was the host of Steven Crowder's show, where it would be produced. They would receive the subscribers that Steven Crowder brought in. So there's a paywall called the Mug Club, where it was like Patreon or any of these things that were kind of behind it's basically creating a paywall to get access to exclusive content, right? And the Blaze would technically get the funding for it and disperse it back down to the show, creating the revenue cycle because Steven Crowder's YouTube channel is demonetized because of the continued xenophobia, racism, transphobia, etc. With all that setup happening, in December, and I think it is Binky as well. I probably misspoke. I'm thinking of Pinky in the Brain because there's an episode of Arthur I think that I'm mixing it up with. But in December, apparently, Steven Crowder's contract for his show came to an end with The Blaze. Now we don't know what happened. We don't know why his stay with The Blaze, his support with The Blaze, wasn't extended. We don't know why. We may never know why. He signed. Almost everybody is speculating that he signed an NDA that doesn't allow him to, really kind of dig into what happened there. With that being said, he basically took December off of recording his show, putting out content, and registered a website called Stop Big Con. And he's not talking about stopping me, although he might be talking about me because I could probably take him in a lifting competition if I had to. Steven, if you're seeing this, we can have a bench off any day. But no, Stop Big Con is Steven Crowder's attempt at creating a movement to stop big conservative, which is, anything. If you want to dive into the quote populist right wing mind, just put big in front of anything and it immediately makes it bad. Which is silly, but big government, big tech, all this stuff, big con. So he was bracing himself for this fight where he can go after whoever, the Blaze, another company, and just really let him have it. But in the interim, he was discussing getting a contract for his show with a new platform. That platform was not public. We did not know who it was when he was discussing this publicly for the first time, by the way. So just, to keep the suspense, I mean, you already know who it was, but to keep the suspense going for the time, he didn't allude to who it was. He didn't say who it was. He just said a big conservative network offered him a contract that he said was like slave wages. In that, Crowder continued to allude, and then that night, Ben Shapiro's co-owner, Mr. Boring, released a hour-long video basically going over the contract that they had offered to Steven Crowder for his show, which, brace yourselves, this is what is considered slave labor or slave wages by Mr. Crowder. A $50 million contract for 4 years, so $12.5 million per year. $50 million for his horrendous show where he wears a holster and has a gun on his side because he gets sponsors from gun manufacturers and a holster manufacturer. $12.5 million to produce the show and to own the show for those 4 years, and own in perpetuity for all the content that was produced with the Daily Wire's funding, specifically the exclusive content, let's say. So essentially there was like yearly stipulations that you have to do one show of this and one show of that, whatever. But it was very minimal. By the way, he got 24 days off. He wouldn't work on Fridays. And the Daily Wire leaks all of this stuff publicly, I guess. It's not leak, I mean, it's their control. And Steven Crowder starts, shaking in his holster. And I don't know that he expected them to just come out of the gate and just be like, boom, here we go. But he was kind of alluding to this, secretly, because he wanted to say, oh, this big conservative outlet, they're hurting the little guy. They are, pushing me down, while nobody knows like the real revenue that that Steven Crowder brings in, because not even himself, because we don't know how many subscribers he has to the quote Mug Club. We also don't know how much money he gets from sponsorships, etc. But to turn down $50 million and call it slave wages is pretty insane. He also, he's also like just hurting his own employees, because presumably, unless he could earn more money and give them more money, he's just hurting them. But also having this contract leak to the public, where his own employees will now know all the different pieces of it and what he turned down, is also not going to look good for him when he knows that, oh, if $12.5 million is enough, even with a $1 million overhead budget, which he doesn't have, by the way, because all he has is a studio and he has like a couple people working for him. If he had a $1 million budget, he'd still be coming home with $11.5 million per year. So the one stipulations or some of the stipulations otherwise are, if he got further demonetized, if certain things got taken down, then there were penalties for it. So, he's alluding to this giant controversy. Oh, they're just coming after me. I'm the little guy, blah, blah, blah. Well, the Daily Wire went back and fired at him, dropping all the information. And then Ben Shapiro himself comes after, and I'm pulling up clip. Ben Shapiro himself will tell us what really happened. And this is, of course, if you believe Ben Shapiro, but this is what really happened, according to the Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro.
This term sheet offering him $50 million over 4 years plus a 2-year extension for $25 million. Basketball player type money. On November 2nd, Steven called up Jeremy and said, I want $30 million a year.
Jeremy Boring, which is the other guy.
I'm not going to redline the term sheet. I'm not going to edit the term sheet. I just want you to send me a brand new offer. On November 6th, 4 days later, remember, this is after he's already sounded off. He's got the term sheet. He's had it for a month. November 6th was election night. You'll recall, if you're a Daily Wire fan, Steven Crowder appeared on our election night coverage. Everything was very friendly. Everything was very chummy. Everything was great.
Chummy.
November 14th or thereabouts, we decided that we couldn't meet his demands, that his demands were not rational in business terms, that he wanted too much.
So what Shapiro's not saying here, but we found out later, was that his counteroffer to the $50 million was a $120 million contract over 4 years.
Much money and all the rest of it. So we let him know, no hard feelings. We're still friends, just like we do in every contract negotiation. As Tim Pool said on his show last night, we've had contract negotiations with Tim, and we disagreed, and we went our separate ways, and we still like Tim. Tim still likes us, and all the rest.
We'll see about that, because we have a clip from Tim Pool's show with Steven Crowder in a second here as well, but...
Okay, so November 14th or thereabouts, we told Steven that we couldn't meet his demands. Fast forward another month, December 12th, he registered the site Stop Big Con. Hey, that's when he registered.
Remember, not me.
It. Remember, October 5th is when he received the terms. November 14th is when we said we could not meet his demands. December 12th is when he registered Stop Big Con, because he knew that 3 days later, he was going to be announcing that he was leaving the Blaze. He needed a plan, and attacking us was the plan. December 15th, he announced he was leaving the Blaze. A month after that, he texted Jeremy.
Here is where it gets really juicy, because I haven't told you what happens here yet.
Friendly fashion to ask if they could talk. On January 9th, he called Jeremy and proceeded to tape him. Without permission, without Jeremy's knowledge, he proceeded to tape a person who was supposedly his friend. And remember, this is all based on the passion of the upset that he had over a term sheet that was submitted to him on October 5th. It is a month. It's actually 36 days January 17th is when he launches Stop Big Con. So just to get this straight, just to get the timeline straight, because this is what we would call a premeditated move in an attempt to grow your email list. This means 104 days elapsed between when Steven Crowder received the term sheet that we submitted to him and when he launched Stop Big Con. 104 days.
So there you have it. The recording was of Shapiro's co-owner and seeing what he can get him to admit on video, basically. Now, what's really important here, and is kind of not alluded to, but the reason why Steven Crowder was talking about 50 million being slave wages is because the recording he got of Jeremy Boring was him saying that sometimes new creators, not necessarily meaning Crowder, but other new creators have to come in and do work and be basically wage slaves, which a normal capitalist usually wouldn't admit that that's what they're doing, saying that wage slavery exists. But Steven Crowder is very clearly talking about how exploitive this contract is, how it's not good enough for him because if he gets demonetized, and they already know he's demonetized, he's going to get penalized, and all these gripes that he has. Boo-hoo. Shapiro gets pissed because of the recording. I mean, somewhat rightfully so. I mean, if someone was recording me, I'd be kind of mad. But then we have Steven Crowder going on the Tim Pool show, as I pull it up here, and discussing what his gripes are with the Daily Wire itself now.
Back to you time and time again, if you did what company X, if you did what...
So what he's talking about is his conversations with YouTube. Look at this is a great picture. He looks totally stable here. He's definitely not sweating. He's definitely not nervous. Talking about YouTube, his contact at YouTube, telling him how he could basically get remonetized or how he could just not lose his monetization on YouTube so he can make more money because he's complaining about Daily Wire. He has alluded to the Daily Wire not getting banned, not getting demonetized, etc. And there is a real critique there, and I will come back to that in a second. But he is talking about it and saying, why don't I just fall in line?
Company, meaning big conservative companies who have meetings with them. As if you did that, we might be able to get you remonetized or at least not suspended. And that's what, this is the thing.
Is there any examples you could give us about key issues specifically about that?
Yeah, anything relating, back in the day on trans issues. For example, we had a character like we did for a long time. Trenny Bane was a character that we did. It was Bane Dark Knight series, and the whole idea was an uprising, Arkham Asylum against YouTube. They said you can't do that anymore. There was one where they said you can't sell off-site the socialism shirt that we had, which wasn't even on YouTube. The socialism was for fig shirt. You don't want to know the funny story about that? I've never seen John laugh so hard. Was we started selling on the website because socialism is for figs. It's a play on words. You may not like it, but people also need to know Che Guevara executed gays, right? This is a guy, when you wear a Che Guevara shirt, you're wearing a Hitler who was less successful in being charismatic and duping people. Not saying Hitler was successful. I'm saying he was a genocidal maniac. So, of course, we're mocking him. YouTube says, well, you can't do that. That shirt is hate speech.
The shirt is mocking Che Guevara, of course, not gay people, which Steven Crowder definitely does not have a problem with gay people. No, none whatsoever. Or trans people. No, none whatsoever. He just loves dressing up in drag and acting a certain way, maybe stereotypical, playing into stereotypes. And I've never seen a guy dress up more in drag, that hates the LGBTQ plus community. And look, if he wasn't such a fucking bigot, then it wouldn't be a big deal. But he could do that, and it would be like George Santos dressing in drag. Not really a big deal. Not really a big deal. But because of his bigotry, because of his actions, because of his ideology, it's a big deal. But that is why he's saying that he gets banned from YouTube.
Speech. It's off the platform. So what we ended up selling at the Crowder shop was a mystery box. And I get a call from one of the most senior executives at YouTube, and I go, what? They go, We know what's in the box. I was like, I'm thinking someone in Silicon Valley is opening it like, fuck! And so we stopped selling. But that's something that's completely off the platform. But the point is,
So that is one part of his appearance on Tim Pool. Now, I am going to talk about, we're going to go to the Pit Bull. And I'm saying this because Shapiro is kind of playing nice. Boring is kind of playing nice. But one person that doesn't give a damn about any of this, and probably is pissed when they saw the money that Steven Crowder was offered and turned down, is Walk Away founder, all the other crap that, former Kanye West advisor, Candace Owens, who happens to also be a host on the Daily Wire. So what does Candace have to think about Steven Crowder?
Over the weekend, I was given a lot more information regarding Steven Crowder, a lot more background information regarding what could have possibly led to this moment. And
what could that be?
Not to my surprise at all. Obviously, this really doesn't have anything to do with the Daily Wire. And his actions are a symptom of something much larger. And I want to choose my words very carefully here because I'm not angry anymore. Steven has a lot.
She's not mad, by the way. She's not mad. We have 2 clips of her. She's not mad. The outfit that she works for getting dragged to the mud a little bit, as it probably should be, but not mad. I repeat, not mad.
Going on, I guess is the best way to say it. He has a lot going on, and that should be clear.
A lot going on. He has health issues, supposedly. He has newborn children, but that's not... This is the clear thing, is that she's not alluding to that. She's not alluding to that. We don't know what she's talking about yet. And that is where we'll see as we kind of, over the next couple of weeks or so, we'll see if she goes full nuke on this.
Because people don't do stuff like this if there's not a lot going on in their lives. You don't sell out your friend. You don't record conversations. These things are actions of individuals that are perhaps acting out of desperation. You have to dig deeper. You have to look deeper to fully understand the picture of why somebody might do that. And it's certainly not because somebody is upset with a $50 million contract. And because I now am more aware of certain information, rather than being angry, I would like to implore my audience and everybody that isn't paying attention to this situation not to condemn him, but to pray for him. Sometimes people need a prayer. Sometimes people need a scripture. Stephen purports to be a Christian, and I believe that he needs to lean into his faith. And I am certain that in the near future, more information will come out. I do not think it is my place to say more than that. Well, probably what I should say is I am unsure at this moment if it is my place to say more than that.
That is some juicy drama right there, if I have to say so myself. Because she's not just talking about, like, a contract. Like, she's not just talking about, oh, he's doing this because of he hates big conservative outlets. No. They're right. He is trying to grow his email list. He's trying to be independent. He's trying to launch his own platform. He's trying to do all this stuff, but why? Why is he acting out like this? Why does he feel like he's under such pressure? Why is he not getting the alternative money that he's looking for? And actually, speaking of which, let's go to the second clip, where this is from yesterday. The first one was from 2 days ago. Now this one's from yesterday. Again, and this is not to praise Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, and any of them. This is just showing to you this internal fight between these online right-wingers.
It is not worth us saying anything more, in my opinion. I don't know what the Daily Wire is going to say about it further. But the reason
Remember,
why
she's not mad. This
I think
is
that
not the
people
same
are
day.
Really seeing just how nasty what you did was, and I think that I would hope that you would come to terms with the fact that you owe everybody an apology, that this was never necessary, that you can start whatever company you want. You don't get to step in like a socialist, and it is socialist-like. These are the demands that you hear, and people are trying to establish a union when the Amazon workers have walked out because they have...
This is a great clip to exemplify why she's also not that bright, while she's a stooge for the large billionaires, while she is, coming out here saying that unions are demanding $50 million in wages, which she's going to talk about here in lunch breaks and working from home. Oh, you wanna work from home? You can't do your job from home. While she's sitting in a studio, while she's getting millions of dollars. She's paid by billionaires who pay other millionaires who pay her to spew nonsense so that their ideology and their viewpoint of the world is upheld and not challenged like it should be. But you as a worker should be pushed down. But Steven Crowder's acting like a socialist. Ew. A union person, which remember that Steven Crowder got socked in the jaw by a union member a couple years ago, which is kind of hilarious. But this is the demands that she is alluding to, or not even alluding to, directly calling out and comparing to the demands of Steven Crowder.
Decided that they are worth more. That they
and socialism means starting a union in their world, which is actually true. Like, that is what they think that socialism is. They think that any workers' rights, and this is where the conflation of like populist right and populist left comes into play, where it's like you are not a populist because you hate one sect of the global corporate elite, and specifically for Crowder, a certain religion, I'll just say, or maybe two religions. You're not challenging the status quo. You're not challenging the capitalist system by being a populist on the right, because a populist on the right is a fascist. That is all. You uphold and utilize nationalism to divide people that don't look like you, divide people that don't sound like you, divide people that don't speak the same language as you, that don't practice the same religion as you, that are anything different than you, to divide and uphold the systems that the people that Crowder is supposedly hating on with Big Con, but uplifting them basically by their ideology being perpetuated throughout this media landscape, throughout this country, based on just not being able to challenge it. You can't challenge it on that scale.
They should have 3-hour lunch breaks. They've gotten their contract.
Nobody's ever demanded a 3-hour lunch break
from Amazon, and they realize that their lunch breaks are only 1 hour, and that they're required to show.
Actually, people at Amazon, I don't even think have necessarily a 1-hour lunch break.
Up to work, and they think they should be able to work from home for 3 days a week.
People at Amazon don't ask to work from home because they work in a warehouse.
Post-COVID, and they walk out and they want to stage a union, and this is the big con. It's Amazon. No,
Amazon is not the same thing that she's alluding to in any sort of way.
No, this is the free markets. And so to Tim Pool, what I would say, and I like Tim Pool.
Free markets also, this is something that they don't like to talk about very much. The free market allows for, in theory, with the First Amendment, the right and the freedom to organize and the right to form a union and to collectively bargain based on the First Amendment in this country, but based on the concept more broadly, if you're looking at, countries that don't have the exact same right to collective action through speech.
And I think that he is always very kind to all of his guests that he has on his show. But when he says that he doesn't think $50 million is enough, I would like to say that the free markets will answer that question, right? It doesn't look like anybody's come to him with an offer that's bigger, which is what.
So that is the point that we have to loop back to here. And in closing on this, because the free market has shown that it does not work in this scenario, because the free market would not require billionaires upholding something that doesn't necessarily make a profit, but it is a propaganda outlet. We are dealing with somebody demanding more money because they know that they have more content that they can give to this oligarch, but it's not enough. So the free market, in Candace's viewpoint, isn't working here, or it is working here, but under Steven Crowder's viewpoint, it's not working because it is an exploitative contract, even though they don't believe that contracts can be exploitative, because they don't believe that you can accept a contract that is exploiting a worker, because the employee and the employer come from the same perspective. They both want the same thing. So when they meet at a meeting point, that it can't be possibly a power imbalance. Which is also, they don't understand that the power of collective bargaining, the collective actions by organizing through a union, through a co-op, through activism, through any of these means, they don't like it because it undermines the boss, and they view themselves as the boss rather than the worker. But they LARP and act like they're the worker when it is suitable to them. They LARP and they act like they're the worker when they need to otherize and tap into the fear and the xenophobia of their platform, of their audience, to weaponize them and to villainize the people that they want to go after, which they continuously go after people typically with no power. But in this case, they're punching each other. So this is why we're covering this, because it's fun to watch them punch each other, where no one's going to come out the winner. Nobody's going to come out here and just be like, oh yeah, we totally made it and it's all good. We're going to be watching this as it unfolds, and if something noteworthy comes from it in the next coming week or so, I will bring it up in the next episode. But for right now, the entire point of covering this is just to show you the amount of money, the amount of influence that is bought and sold via billionaires, corporate elites that dump into their propaganda, because these folks will spew it. They have no real ideology. They have nothing that is driving them. The only thing that is driving them is cash. Unlike them, I do this show at a loss. I actually pay money to do this show, basically. But right now, we're going to pivot away from these right-wing nut jobs for a second. We'll come back to the right-wingers, but I wanted to bring to your attention a local issue, and a local issue to me here in Bucks County, but more specifically in Pennsylvania, where, here we go. Senator Steve Sanacero, who is the state senator for the 10th senatorial district here in Bucks County and across Pennsylvania, he is the chairman of the Bucks County Democratic Committee. He was attacked personally by Senator and former failed gubernatorial candidate Doug Mastriano, who got blown the, I don't even want to say F word because I already said it once, but I don't want to get demonetized, even though I don't get monetized. I don't want to get a flag. Got blown out by Josh Shapiro in 2022's midterm elections. So what does Mastriano do? Mastriano releases this, and I'm going to read it for you for those who are not, for those of you not watching. Mastriano sends out an email, basically a memo to other state senators asking for their support for a bill. So the subject is classifying drag show performances as adult-oriented business. And this is a quote from Mastriano now. It says, "In the near future, I plan to introduce legislation to ban drag shows on public property or in areas that can be seen by minors. In Pennsylvania, there has been an alarming uptick in drag performances that cater to children. In April 2022, parents at a school district in Lancaster were shocked to learn about after-school X-rated drag shows that had been occurring on school property." Now, what he determines as, and this is me now, what he determines as X-rated, I don't know. What he considers X-rated, I don't know. Is there video of this? I don't know. Is there evidence of this? I don't know. But he continues. In October 2022, now this, there actually is a video that was shared by libs of TikTok. Again, bigot Kaya Rakik, talking about LGBTQ plus people. There is a video of a prom that was organized here in Bucks County by the Rainbow Room which again was also attacked by libs of TikTok and amplified by bigots like Tucker Carlson, of a prom for queer folks. And these kids, like other kids, are standing there awkwardly. You know, some people are dancing. Some people probably take it too far, the same way a normal prom is. Just like the one that you had 55 years ago, or the one that you had when you were in high school. It's so ridiculous. But this is now back to the quote. In October 2022, a sexually charged drag show for audience members as young as 13 was performed at the Rainbow Room in Bucks County and sponsored by local and state officials. A drag performance is defined as one where a performer exhibits gender identity that is not of the performer's birth origin and includes the use of clothing, makeup, other accessories to further embellish the gender identity of the performer's opposite sex. This legislation will classify drag shows as an adult-oriented business. Under Title 68, as a defined adult-oriented business, drag shows in Pennsylvania will have common sense restrictions such as the permitted locations of performances, age of the intended audience, and the scope and appeal for prurient interest. I don't even know that word. I hope you will join me as a co-sponsor of this important legislation for the welfare and protection of our children. Won't somebody please think of the children? But in that, so just to shade it in a little bit too, in that, release, this memo, basically, he got attention for a lot of the people like downstream, like Andy Meehan, which, Andy, I would love it. Dude, I cannot wait to have you on the show and talk to you, buddy. You are a great guest if I could get you on the show. But Andy Meehan, who is a failed congressional candidate against Brian Fitzpatrick in the 2020 congressional race, loves to tweet at me and loves to tweet at other people, and him and his minions start calling people groomers and calling people all this stuff, but specifically have gone after Senator Sanacero about this stuff and saying that the Rainbow Room, because Steve sponsored the queer prom, which we'll go over his statement here in a second, but which is not a big deal. It is a place that is supposed to be welcoming for queer kids. It is a place where they can learn about gender, their gender, more specifically, their sexual orientation, be accepted for it, have questions about it, learn sex ed that is not taught in schools, because sex ed in schools is heteronormative. If at best it's heteronormative, at worst it's abstinence only. All of that, and this prom was literally just to have kids feel safe in a community. I'll also point out in chat, it's literally a community program group that no one has to allow themselves or their children to be associated with. I'm gonna loop back to that too, because, well, I'll just say it now. Like, here's the thing with drag shows. I don't really get it personally, but just because I don't get it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be allowed. Doesn't mean that it shouldn't be celebrated by some people. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't be performed in front of kids necessarily. There are age-appropriate things, sure. Maybe they shouldn't be naked. I have news for you. They're not. Drag shows that are aimed for like story time drag shows typically aren't that big of a deal either, because parents go with kids. First of all, parents go with kids to these things. They are interacting with people in their performance in this space, which let me finish this thought. I'm sorry. To read books. It's not that big of a deal. But while we're on this subject, just really quickly, because I think this kind of needs to be said, and I've had this conversation just by the few episodes of RuPaul's Drag Race I've watched, just by having conversations with, former state representative Brian Sims, because I interviewed him previously and I've had private conversations with him and just asked him about, because he was a judge on RuPaul's Drag Race at some point. And I basically was asking all these questions, and basically what it boils down to is drag performers are not trans individuals. Drag performers are not necessarily non-binary. Drag performers are not necessarily gay. Drag is its own thing. But people in this community, and I mean, when I say this community now, I'm talking about the right-wingers, want to loop drag performances into this sexual deviancy, some sort of perversion. It's not. It might be for some percentage of people, just the same way that, people could be attracted to earlobes. I don't know. But for the most part, it is harmless. You don't hear, this is the other thing, you don't hear about you don't hear about drag performers going in and shooting up buildings. You don't hear about them mass, graping people. You don't hear about any of that stuff because it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. The people that are afraid of these people because they've been told that there is something wrong with them, they're the ones that go and shoot up a school. They're the ones that go and shoot up a nightclub that has happened. They're the people that do this stuff. They're the ones committing violent acts. That is unacceptable, and that is the stuff that needs to be called out, because the violence comes from one side, and it is not the left. It is never the left that commits these gigantic acts of violence. Yes, there are one-offs where it's like some guy goes and shoots up a baseball game, of the congressional baseball game. Yeah, that happens. But how many other examples do you have compared to the dozens and dozens and dozens of right-wingers inspired by people like Tucker Carlson, like libs of TikTok, like Doug Mastriano doing this stuff? I'm tired of it because I don't give a damn about drag shows. And if you don't want to go see them, don't go see them. You don't want your kids to go see them? Then don't bring your kids to go see them, because they're not just saying bring right-wingers' kids just to trigger their parents. That's not what this is. The same way, if you don't want to go see a band, don't go see a band. You don't want to go see Metallica, don't go see Metallica. You don't want to go see freaking Aerosmith, don't go see Aerosmith. It's not that complicated. It is not that complicated. It's so frustrating dealing with this crap, but rightfully so. Our state senator pushed back against Doug Mastriano because he's trying to propose something in the state senate, and I'm going to read some of it. But the first response here is him talking about in all this time serving in the General Assembly, the House mostly, but also in the state Senate, he's never had somebody writing in response to, or he's never had to write in response to someone co-sponsoring or sponsoring a bill. He says also, the Rainbow Room, which Planned Parenthood established over 20 years ago to be a safe place for LGBTQ plus youth to come together and build self-esteem, first held the prom, the queer prom that he's talking about, in February 2020. He was at the event. I'm reading his quotes, so I don't have to say he. Both as an elected official sponsoring it and as a parent, our younger son had come out as gay about 8 months before and was excited to attend the prom with his friends. Like you do when you go to the prom. Due to the pandemic, the Rainbow Room had to cancel the prom in 2021, but it was able to hold it again this past fall. He did not, he says, while family weekend at our younger son's college prevented me from attending that prom, I once again agreed to sponsor the dance. Its organizer sent me a video of it later. What I observed, and this is kind of a key part here, what I observed in person in 2020, and again by watching the video of the 2022 prom, was a large group of teenagers having fun. What struck me, in fact, was that they could have been kids, gay or straight, at any school in the country. For the most part, they danced with the same awkwardness as any other teenager. I say that endearingly as someone who, even in late middle age, is still awkward on the dance floor. What was apparent was that each one of them was happy. They were happy to be with their friends and happy to be in a loving environment where it was okay to be themselves. There is much other here, but he's saying it's an important point. Many of these students do not feel accepted by their peers, although it has been my experience, both as a teacher and as a parent, that the younger generations are far more open to them than older ones. It is, this next paragraph also is important. With this background, I hope you can appreciate why I was saddened and indeed angered when I read the gentleman, meaning Mastriano's, co-sponsored memo, which described the 2022 prom as a sexually charged drag show. I can only assume that this distortion, written by someone who was not present, is based on the fact that one student and one recent alum of the Rainbow Room dressed in drag and danced at the request of the prom committee. That can hardly be grounds for describing the hours-long prom as a drag show. Also, there's a part where people were alluding to a gift bag that was given out, including condoms and other, lube is what is alluded to here. Information about Planned Parenthood as well here. This is what's important. And I'll come back to me here. It is not vital. It is not vital to talk about this stuff from the perspective of a right-winger. But it is imperative that we provide kids in the queer community, specifically, with sexual orientation, with sexual education, so that they are protected in their own sexuality, that they are emotionally prepared for existing in a world that may be more challenging to them than, well, frankly, is more challenging for them than someone that is a heterosexual, cisgendered person. But it is also imperative to provide them with resources, because those resources are not provided in public education. So it is with, I am proud that Steve stood up for this. I am proud as an ally that he is pushing back against Mastriano, because Mastriano is a bozo. And I'm hoping more and more of this stuff happens from Democrats, where, when we have to fight, we fight. We don't just take it and lie down and die. But we'll see. So with that being said, let's go on over to some more sweet culture war stuff. It all comes down back to conservatives are literally shaking waiting for any opportunity to freak out at people they view as degenerate. I would assume that is, even if their behavior is not any different than people they support. Agreed. But yes, and Mastriano is a bozo. That is the culture war coming home, right? Now, let's talk about the culture war more broadly, because things are going to start to expand from here. And I'm going to talk about an extremely weird one first, because it's silly. But then I'm going to draw us into
pushing and talking.
I'm going to draw us more into a broader critique of this culture war. And that culture war we're going to start off with, which is an older clip, but a clip of Tucker Carlson being mad about the green M&M not being sexy enough for him.
But they've been changed. You're seeing the changes right now on your screen. The green M&M, you will notice, is no longer wearing sexy boots. Now she's wearing sensible sneakers. Why the change? Well, according to M&M's, quote, "We all win when we see more women in leading roles, because leading women do not wear sexy boots. Leading women wear frumpy shoes. The frumpier, the better. That's the rule." The other big change is that the brown M&M has, quote, transitioned from high stilettos to lower block heels. Also less sexy. That's progress. M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous.
He's freaking out about candy mascots not being sexy enough. Just fully grasp that.
Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally
Listen, you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. Who wouldn't want to have a drink? Who wouldn't want to have a beer or a glass of wine with this lovely brown M&M? Which, by the way, you'd be hard-pressed to be able to tell the difference between the right and the left. Who wouldn't want to have a relationship with these M&Ms before or after, by the way? Because they're just so appealing. It is so... I'm so enraged that my favorite candy is not sexy enough.
turned off, we've achieved equity. They've won. Meanwhile, in a non...
If you're not turned off, he just said, if you're not turned off, we haven't achieved equity. That is not the case. But let's also remind us that these are the same people that are trying to say that the left is obsessed with sex and they're creating this degenerate culture. They're over-sexualizing movies. The LGBTQ... Oh, God, don't even get them talking about LGBTQ characters in shows. Oh, I have to watch a guy kiss another guy? Oh, heavens me.
to the burgeoning wellness
Won't somebody think of the children?
movement, the orange M&M will, quote, acknowledge and embrace his anxiety. And actually, if you look at him, the orange M&M does appear very anxious. Maybe he doesn't like all the ugly new shoes he sees around him. Maybe he liked the sexy boots.
Now he's just distressed. He kind of looks like Tucker, honestly. Is Tucker? I thought it was the yellow M&M, but maybe this is the orange one. I can't really tell. But the yellow one I thought was the one that was supposed to act like this. Who knows? I mean, I can't really tell anymore. The personalities of my M&Ms are all changing. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the absurdity of it. But look, M&Ms also created a. Well, I'm not going to play the clip, but M&M's also made an all-female, which he got upset about, but an all-female, bag of M&Ms, which is just like the purple, the green, and the brown M&Ms, and they all freaked out. All the conservatives were having a conniption over it, and now in response, the Mars Corporation is getting rid of all their candies for right now, the mascots, and replacing them with Maya Rudolph, who is a comedian from SNL. The real issue here, though, is that this is representative of the culture war at large, and we're going to continue seeing this. We're going to continue seeing it extrapolated, because guess what? Not only was Tucker Carlson flipping out about M&Ms this week, Tucker Carlson last week was saying that cigarettes and cigars shouldn't be banned being smoked inside, specifically in the Congress. So if you're in the House of Representatives, you should be able to rip cigs on the floor of Congress. No, literally, that's what he believes. And he had a bozo from the Cigar Caucus, a Republican from the Cigar Caucus, on his show to discuss why the House Republicans are going to allow smoking back in the House again. He talked about gas stoves, which is the most recent thing. Gas stoves being a big issue because supposedly gas stoves are as American as apple pie. But this is the craziest part. You don't want to fuck any of them anymore. And yes, the Cigar Caucus. Yes, the Cigar Caucus. I did not stutter. I am being honest. There is the Cigar Caucus, which is just a bunch of guys that want to smoke cigars in the Capitol. But Tucker Carlson was flipping out about gas stoves, which studies have now found have a 40% increase in likelihood of childhood. And this is someone, I'm saying this as someone with a gas stove. Increase in childhood asthma, 40% increase. That is studies that have just come out. This is not like we don't have to fight on everything all the time. Science is science, and if something says, hey, vaccines work, maybe we should listen to the science. If science said inhaling gas is good for you, then maybe we should listen to that. But that's not what the science is. The science says that inhaling gas is bad for you. And now there is a I'm gonna see if I pulled it up quick enough. Before the show, yeah, here it is. An NPR article here for those interested. But the FDA has issued new guidance calling for the lowest possible lead levels in food for babies and children under 2. Exposure to toxic metals can be harmful to developing brains. This came out this morning. The reason why that's important is because the same people that are going to be crying about this, the literal heavy metals that they're talking about, the toxic metals in babies' food, is lead. They're talking about lead. Lead, which previously was in paint and gasoline, when ingested by the human body, increases levels of violent behavior. Now, I couldn't explain exactly why, but there is proven studies as to the extremely potent, the extremely valid, not causation, because can't say that, but correlation with the decrease in lead over a 30-year period of studies. A decrease in lead in paint and in gasoline, which is burned and put into the air and then we would breathe it, or paint when you're literally living in it, or if you're a child and you're eating paint chips, which maybe people like Ted Cruz have, but who knows. That decreased violent crime over that period, which also just happened to coincide with the tough on crime stuff, but it happened in a worldwide scale, so that's a much stronger argument for what decreased crime over the period. But all that's to say, the culture war, instead of saying that we shouldn't have lead in baby food, the culture war should say we should have as much lead as needed. And here's also the thing, and you learn this all the time. You learn new stuff all the time, I should say. And I've been learning a little bit about this, listening to people. I have started to like to learn more about agriculture and farming and all that stuff. But the burning of fossil fuels specifically, and the growing of I guess not growing of livestock, but whatever. You know what I'm saying. Livestock, eating grass, specifically cows, creates a perpetual cycle of this recycling of lead and other heavy metals into the American and worldwide diet for the most part, because the fossil fuels burn, it seeps into the soil grows to grass or grows the food is eaten, and then it goes through the human body or the animal's body, as it will, and it causes these problems. So this culture war stuff is going to continue to get worse. They're going to keep finding stuff that's problematic. They didn't like it when they switched off of different light bulbs. They don't like it when you do anything for efficiency's sake, because they hate the environment. God forbid you care about the environment, which here is a short clip about something that I really like to do, which is about video games. And Fox News had a clip today talking about the green agenda for Xbox. Ooh.
But we understand what this is. It's not that it's actually going to offset emissions. Okay, the level of reduction is infinitesimal, but they're trying to recruit your kids into climate politics at an earlier age.
So, he doesn't explain it, but the Xbox One or the Xbox Series X, so the Xbox One is an older generation. The Xbox Series X or the Xbox Series S, I believe, are the newer Xboxes that come with a power saving setting that automatically shuts it off after a certain amount of time. You can change it the same way that you can change it on your computer or your TV or any other appliance or your phone to save the battery. Why would you save the battery other than saving the battery life? It is fuel efficient, it saves people money, and it reduces climate change. Because the lower your emissions, the less carbon in the atmosphere. Now, these guys don't probably understand that the average Xbox Series X has the equivalent of a 30 series graphics card, so like a 3060, 3070 graphics card, which is one of the newer graphics cards, which are used usually when they're new, used to mine Bitcoins or other cryptocurrencies, which are a leading cause in emissions from these types of technologies. They are horrible for the environment, and they don't care about that. They just want to say they're indoctrinating your kids into climate policy, which they're not. There's nothing that says you have to do this, by the way. And the second thing is every other possible combination of technology has energy efficiency, not just for climate change, but literally to save people money. My computer doesn't stay on all day. It goes to sleep because otherwise I'd be paying out the wazoo because I have a certain level of graphics card that would just be running all day. And yeah, that $10 might not mean a lot to me individually, but over time and amplified by millions of people, it does make an impact on the environment. But they don't care about that. Now we have one other thing that I wanted to talk about before we go. And this is continued similarly to culture war. But here is an article from CBS News about a fight in Iowa over food stamps. SNAP, it's called. The Republicans, and this is why I'm talking about, they're a joke. Their policies are a joke. Their policies have no material benefit to the American people. Their policies are just about punishing, otherizing, demonizing, and uplifting, then uplifting their own benefactors and their own families and their own donors. That's it. So SNAP wants to ban. This is just sick, to be honest with you. I had a class this week for school, and I'm in an economics course for my grad school, and we talked about SNAP, and we were talking about the investments going into this. And I almost threw this type of article into the chat just to toss a discussion out there. But in Iowa, the Republicans are proposing to ban fresh meat, flour, butter, white bread, American cheese, etc. from the available things from SNAP. So what is SNAP, real quick? SNAP is more broadly known as food stamps, but SNAP is used, these you get a card, an EBT card, to go into the store, buy food, right? That food is already limited. You can't buy anything in the store, which is already kind of stupid if you ask me. But if you are given a certain amount of money to buy food, you should be able to buy the food that you want. Now, remember, in America, the cheapest foods are usually filled and loaded with corn, artificial sugar, artificial sweeteners. They're not good for you. So even if you wanted to get something like a cake, where if you had like a legit cake, really made, properly done, not just loaded with corn syrup and sugar, that wouldn't be nearly as bad for you as it is in America. That's besides the point, but the cheaper stuff is loaded with this stuff because it's cheap for the producers, it's cheap for the supply chain. Corn is subsidized, and it's put into the supply chain, right? Then, on the other end, you can't afford. You're allotted a certain amount, a dollar amount of what you can buy. So, as a consumer, you're obviously going to choose, some things that you're going to choose that you just want. But as a consumer, with the recipient of these, food stamps, for lack of a better term, you're going to choose the most efficient for you, which is getting the most food, which is the cheapest, which is the shittiest food for you. But in this country now, and specifically in Iowa, but this is something that's going to be taken probably broader, they don't want you to have fresh meat. So what, you should only have processed meat? You should only have Spam? You should only have meat that comes in a can? You can't have American cheese? Like, not that American cheese is good for you, but you can't have American cheese. Other cheese is fine. You can't have white bread, but you could probably have some weird alternative bread. Like, we're talking about the dollar going farthest for these people. And if you want to have the dollar go farther for people that receive these benefits, one, either subsidize healthy alternatives to be cheaper for them, which I think is the actual answer, or two, allow them to choose what they actually want. Republicans want to patronize, diminish the influence of these programs. They want to cut Social Security while they're at it, which I'm not diving into too much here today, but we will talk about that again, I'm sure. They want to punish the poor because they believe that they deserve to be poor. Because they feel that people made a decision and that's what happened. And that's not the case. For some people it might be, but not for everybody. And it kind of all loops back to what I was talking about with Steven Crowder. The Republicans don't really care about being for the average man or woman. They care about LARPing as a populist in the post-Trump era, acting like they care about... Look, even Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is acting like he is this really big, I'm a populist, and yet he is an aloof Harvard grad with a ton of money, never had to worry about anything, never had to fight for his own success. The same thing with Steven Crowder, by the way, but they want to punish people that are struggling. They want to make it harder for people to, because remember, food stamps or SNAP, Medicare, well, they don't want to talk about Medicare, but Social Security, Medicaid, these are, first of all, they're all, I don't know about SNAP, but they're all New Deal and or Great Society, not Greater Society, although you should subscribe to the Greater Society right now, but they're all New Deal or Great Society products, essentially. The programs that were designed under Democrats, by the way, but Democrats that were pro-working class. I think the Democratic Party of today has to do a lot better of a job doing that, not just wrap themselves in the performative equality and the corporate egalitarianism that they kind of utilize as a cudgel. But the New Deal style of standing up for people's rights in the working conditions, standing up for unions, standing up for wages, standing up for people, again, that are of all different races, of all different religions, of all different sexual orientations, of all genders. That is what, I mean, this kind of closes this nicely, I feel like, but that is what the point of this show is in the end. That's what the point of elevating progressive politics should be, is creating essentially the 21st century New Deal, the 21st century greater society. And it's incumbent upon people like us to not overlook when state legislators, as we talked about with Steve, or we talked about with this proposal, that state legislators are much easier to flip, by the way, but two, are much easier once you have gained power to make changes happen because there's fewer people and it's more impactful in the local level. These are places where they're going to pass legislation that is impactful, but also could be impactful in the wrong way. Remember that in Pennsylvania, the Republicans control the state Senate and potentially, depending on how these elections come out, the state House, but we're probably going to control the state House. But in Pennsylvania, specifically in Doylestown Township, not in Doylestown Borough anymore, but in Doylestown Township too, there is no protection for people based on their gender identity. So you could be fired for being trans. You could be fired for being gay in Pennsylvania. That is the type of thing that is materially beneficial because the working conditions of people in the LGBTQ plus community could be impacted by it. People that we don't need a hand out, we need a hand up. You need a job. You need a short, housing. You need a short-term boost in your income. So here, boom, here's welfare payment. There are plugs into the system because that's why a social democracy is useful. That's why Denmark, Sweden, all these countries that Republicans love to talk about how capitalist they are, but they have a much better social safety net. They're not socialists either, but they have a significantly better social safety net and they have a much higher unionization rate. All of that is to say the balance needs to be fought for because the balance has not been struck, and we're not even close to even getting back to where the Great Society was, let alone where the New Deal was, because I'd probably argue that coming out of the New Deal, the 40s and 50s, into the 60s got a little hairy, but that was the epitome of the American middle class, because the middle class exists because the middle class is supposed to be what the majority of people are. The shrinking middle class is something that we've probably all heard of. It shouldn't be shrinking. It should be growing larger, and it should be growing higher. The minimum of people in the middle class should be getting the bottom of the boat should be getting lifted if capitalism was working as they said it should be, or as the neoliberalism austerity that we're going to be hit with over the next. Oh, I could go on for hours here, but the neoliberal austerity cuts to spending, the neoliberal tax cut raises on the middle and lower class and working class people, those things are going to be impactful. But God forbid we raise taxes on the wealthy, because can't do that. Can't do that. Not yet. Not yet. But if you want to. If you want to support progressive policies, if you want to support progressive media, progressive independent media, hit that subscribe button while you are here on YouTube. That'll help us grow the show. We are at 99 subscribers, which is absolutely garbage, but one more and we'll hit 100, which is a lot better than 99. And that'd be awesome. New clips come out twice a week, and you guys can listen to the show if you would prefer to do so on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you can get your podcasts. You can follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Greater Society Media. You can follow me on Twitter at Con O'Hanlon. And you can support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/Greater Society Media for as little as $5 a month. Join us in the Discord. The Discord server has a link to it in the description box below, and if you are a member of the Discord server, be sure to start throwing out ideas that you have for the show. If you want to send clips, you want guests, you want to just have a discussion with people that are progressive in a safe space, go ahead and do so in the Discord server. That would be awesome. But with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching. Again, smash that subscribe button while you're here. But until next week, stay safe. Peace.